To quote the great Jimi Hendrix, knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens. You're listening to The Wisdom Project, a podcast that does just that. We listen.
My name is Doug Boyd, director of the Louie B. Nunn Center for Oral History in the University of Kentucky Libraries.
And I'm Kopana, oral history archivist at the Nunn Center.
Lately I've been traveling a great deal for work, all over the U.S., but now internationally as well. No matter where I go, there's one constant in my travels that reminds me of home. In fact, it's just 3 letters: KFC.
Kentucky Fried Chicken was never conceived as a product to be franchised. It was conceived as just a good item on the menu in the dining room.
The Nunn Center has close to 10,000 interviews, and we continue to discover interviews that we never knew we had. We recently stumbled on an interview recorded on a reel-to-reel tape from a student project in the 1970s. That interview is with Colonel Sanders. Yes, the Colonel Sanders.
It's a little-known fact, but Kentucky has a pretty amazing tradition of being the home of several nationally and internationally known fast food restaurants. Papa John's Pizza, Long John Silver's, and of course, the iconic Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now, Colonel Sanders sold his company in 1964 for $2 million, yet remains the face of the brand even today. We all recognize Colonel Sanders, the marketing icon, but who was Colonel Sanders the person, the entrepreneur?
Colonel Sanders was commissioned a Kentucky colonel by Governor Ruby Laffoon in 1935. He was recommissioned a Kentucky colonel in 1950, at which point he began dressing the part, the goatee, the suit, the whole bit. And also, for the record, both Doug and I are Kentucky colonels.
Along with Bill Clinton, Winston Churchill, Ashley Judd, Johnny Depp, and of course, Elvis Presley.
Pretty good company, I think.
Colonel Sanders began selling fried chicken from his roadside gas station and restaurant in North Corbin, Kentucky during the Great Depression.
I had a little restaurant down at Corbin. It wasn't much of a restaurant then. I just started, and that was in 1930 when everybody was broke. Will Rogers made the statement, life begins at 40. Well, you see, me being an 1890 model, I was just 40 years old in 1930. So I thought now's the time for me to decide what I want to do with the rest of the world. Well, what was all going to begin at 40? All of us at 40 could begin. Now I'd start. So I took stock of all the things that I had done in the past. Writing insurance and salesman, Secretary of Chamber of Commerce, studied law, soldiered. I'd been a soldier. I went in the Army when I was 27 days after I was 16 years old. So I didn't want any of that. But I did think, looking to the future, people are going to have to eat to live. So I thought, well, that's a good thing to stick to. I'll just stick to the gasoline and the food business, because they're going to have food and they're going to have gas regardless. And after about 2 years, while the food business outrun the gasoline business, it got to be more or less of a nuisance, you know. You wore different clothing in the gas station you would in the dining room.
What was the name of your restaurant back then? Sanders Court and Cafe.
The famous restaurant reviewer and original local foodie Duncan Hines featured the Sanders Cafe in a 1939 edition of Adventures in Good Eating. Apparently, Hines was a fan of the cafe as a stop while working as a traveling salesman. By 1940, Sanders had perfected his secret recipe for frying chicken.
So Colonel Sanders had a gas station, a cafe, and a motel. His cafe had some great national publicity. Business was booming, but in 1950, there was talk of the interstate being built, which would no doubt have a negative impact on business for a roadside motel, gas station, cafe that was not going to be along the interstate. So Colonel Sanders decided to go full-time into franchising.
Well, at that time, I begun to thinking, well, maybe I better see if I can franchise this chicken and do some franchise business in case I get crowded out of the restaurant business. And the restaurant gets finally the road that I seen it was going through, and of course I was getting older all the time, and I begun to draw Social Security at 65, $105 a month. So Claudia and I reasoned that $105 would pay my travel in Kentucky and Indiana. I took those two states because practically every town up that country's got some industry and payroll. And we surely could get enough franchise, 100 franchises there. It would average $10 a month in royalty. And that'd give us $12,000 a year. So we concluded then we'd sell the property at auction. We couldn't sell it privately. So then we did sell it at auctions. Auctioned the property off. It brought $75,000. By the time I paid up my taxes and current accounts and everything, that wiped that out, did you see?
Yeah.
So then that's when I had the franchise. Then I only got a nickel a head on the chicken. I get 5 cents for each chicken that the restaurant would use if you took a franchise. I had out the about 4 or 5 guinea pig franchises that looked like they could be a success. They were doing fine with it. And so I hit Pete Arm in Salt Lake City. And he was making such a big success out there of it, it was just simply, they were going wild.
Whoa, wait. The first franchise for KFC was in Salt Lake City?
Utah, Indiana, these were some of the earliest franchises. But this was no easy transition for the Colonel. Like any successful startup, founders have to work extremely hard.
The other 4 or 5, one in Indianapolis and one in Greenfield, Indiana, and one at Kokomo, they were meeting with good success with it. So I had reached the age of 66 by that time, but I concluded I'd franchise, sell my business at auction, and I'd put in all my time. My future was to be in the franchise business. Well, you can see it started out very slow. I didn't have anybody to handle the chicken. I got a nickel out of a chicken, and he got 4 orders out of a chicken. So I had 3 orders out of a chicken. So that didn't do me much good. It was very slow. So money was scarce with me too, after I'd paid up all my bill. And I just had my $105 Social Security. That was to buy gas and pay a hotel bill if I stayed in hotels.
Yeah.
But I had a big heavy wool red blanket that my franchise in Salt Lake City had given me. He was one of my first guinea pigs. Done a success. And he done so good, they got a Utah woolen mill there in Salt Lake City that weaves blankets. And he had a blanket woven to the Sanders, you see, and had a picture of their seal on the beehive and bees flying in. And that big red blanket was heavy. I roll up in that blanket and sleep in the car at night, so if I got a franchise the next day, I got to have money enough to buy the cookers instead of having to give it to the hotel.
Later on, the Colonel is asked about the name Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Well, where did you get the name Kentucky Fried Chicken?
Oh, now that's a very good thing, too. Why did I call it Kentucky Fried Chicken? All the menus of the little cheap restaurants, or any restaurant for that matter, he had a fried chicken on it, Southern Fried Chicken. Well, these little greasy spoon restaurants that had a French fryer, they fried fish, shrimp, and onions all in that same fat. And if you got any fried chicken there, you got fried chicken fried in there where they'd fried shrimp and fish. So that onion and the fat didn't have a good neutral taste. He didn't have any special seasoning for his chicken like I did. And therefore, it was not Southern Fried Chicken. And I figured people that had eaten chicken as Southern Fried Chicken in somebody else's restaurant wouldn't want none of mine if I had it on my menu as Southern Fried Chicken. They'd think of what they had back in Toledo, Ohio, don't you see? So I thought, well, Kentucky's a southern state, and that's synopsis of the South, so I'll call mine Kentucky Fried Chicken.
So you're the one.
And that's where it got its name, Kentucky Fried Chicken. I reasoned that was good too, because Kentucky is the famous known for rich in tradition and romance and love, shooting everything. Kentucky's well known, so that gave us some special significance. And Kentucky never did object, and never have yet. Consequently, I took the name of Kentucky. They were corner of the world. And see, they know now, Kentucky Fried Chicken.
About an hour into the interview, our young interviewer ends our suspense and finally asks the questions we have all been waiting for. What's up with the slogan, finger licking good? And what's up with the white suit?
There's one thing I wanted to ask you, and I forgot to ask you. Where did the slogan about the chicken that it's finger licking good?
Finger licking good.
Where did it come from?
Well, we applied to the chicken because you never see anybody eating a piece of chicken and holding it in their fingers. And they don't bend the fingers to lip, do they?
No.
Now, with the finger licking, though, we used to say that when we go to the sorghum stir-offs at night in the fall year when they're making sorghum molasses. And the foam, you know, it worked back and forth through the boiler there and then go to the foam, the waste part is put in a can. We kids would go to those stir-offs and dip their finger into that sorghum syrup and eat the foam. And it was actually we said it was finger licking good, whether we was licking doing it with our fingers. Just something we kind of come up with it. Something that I wasn't proud of, though, to apply it in the chicken because mothers are trying to keep their kids from licking their fingers, don't you see?
Oh.
And there I was telling them it was finger licking good, but I noticed them mothers, they lick their fingers too when they eat chicken.
Well, does white, you know, like you always have white on, does it have any significance? White?
Yes, it did for me. The significance of white, as I use it today, it's made an image from me and a trademark. But when the first time I was ever on television was at Colorado Springs, my franchisee there was having an interview for me on TV. It's in the summertime, and I wore white Palm Beach in the summertime, you see. I come off of the program. Somebody in the crowd said to me, Mrs. Colonel, you don't know how much you stood out over all the other men on that scene, you with in your white suit. Well, I had no money for advertising. I thought, well, that's one thing I'll stick with then. I'll wear the white. I was wearing it all right all through the summer. And having Palm Beach had quit making the suits, but my tailor could buy the Palm Beach cloth, and he made my suits over at Lexington, Ben Cohen. And so I was wearing white in the summertime. But that fall, I was at my franchisee in Vancouver, British Columbia. And a clothing salesman came in, takes orders for sale, just like we have a lot of them today at different places. And he had white wool suiting. And so he measured me up for a suit of white wool. So I wore white in the winter. So I just went from the summer Palm Beaches into the regular weight clothing. And that winter then, I was going through the airport in Cleveland. It was about 10 below zero. I carried my overcoat on my arm, and I walked in all dressed in white, and everybody else freezing to death, so you didn't wear an overcoat. Well, heads bobbed right and left, they'd taken a double take. Who's that? What's that? Somebody in the crowd said, well, that's that chicken man.
Chicken man.
So you see the white come out, it helped me, you might say, get attention to the public, and so they recognize what I was doing, and so it's all helped my business in the long run. So I just wear white today as I wear any other suit.
In 1964, Colonel Sanders sold the company to an investment group led by entrepreneur and later Kentucky Governor John Y. Brown Jr. and his investment partner Jack Massey.
Since I sold the company,
when did you sell the company?
I sold the company in 1964, March of 64, and I got $2 million for it. Well, anybody that looked at this business to buy it, asked them $2 million for something. They didn't see any buildings, any smokestacks, or anything. What were they going to pay $2 million for? I just had a bunch of franchises, you see, that were selling my chicken and paying me a royalty for doing it. And that was a nickel I had. Well, they didn't have, I had records of what I was doing. I'd get paid every month. But it was nothing of a public nature, don't you see, if anybody could value what it was worth. Well, when they offered me $2 million for it, that was their first offer, and of course the only thing, I accepted that. I was 74 years old. I had nobody to succeed me in running the company for my wife and the 2 daughters.
Yeah.
And so therefore it didn't know what would become of the company if I passed away. $2 million would take care of Claudia and I, we thought.
In 2013, the Nunn Center conducted an interview with John Y. Brown Jr., who talks about purchasing Kentucky Fried Chicken.
And we approached the Colonel. First time I introduced him to Mr. Massey, under his breath, he said, I want you to know no city slickers going to come in and buy my company from me. Well, he brought it up. But I think he was at an age where some people were hustling him to sell. But it was a very closely knit family. Nobody wanted anything different. And fortunately, there's a long story there, but we were forced to close the deal. And I had a great time working with the Colonel. You know, he's known himself a rascal. You know, you see him on TV. He was great with me.
You could say that John Y. Brown Jr. and Jack Massey took the Colonel's model to the next level.
We first started out with what the Colonel had. Mm-hmm. We got the Colonel on television, and then sales increased. And sales got to a point to realize that we could do better if it wasn't just an item on the menu in a restaurant, but we have our own store. And we started out just like you would do everything else. We find a cheap space, put up the bucket, sell chicken, carry out, and then we learn what the customer wanted. And I remember when my corporate people came in, I went to show them a drive-through. We had the drive-through before McDonald's or anybody else down in Nashville, a fellow named Marvin Hopper, and they looked at it, no, I think we ought to get the customer to come inside and see if they like the Jell-O or the custard you got or slaw. And people want convenience. And then drive-through, probably 70% of KFC and McDonald's drive-through. I went by Chick-fil-A yesterday, had over 20 cars in the line all the way around into a parking lot shopping center behind them. People in a hurry, they don't want to wait. Maybe they have ADD like I do, you know, they just want to eat it and beat it. So.
From the beginning of this new model, Colonel Sanders remained the marketing face of the company. John Y. Brown talks about this strategy.
Well, it was already ingrained. It was already there. It was our culture. It was our soul. It was the real deal. I mean, he walked in like Jesus had just walked in the room. I'm talking when you have a convention and you walk on and the excitement and the electricity, and that's an unfair advantage. I mean, he was. I don't know if he knew it or thought about it at the time, and once they got him on What's My Line, then we had him on I've Got a Secret, Missing Links, danced on the Lawrence Welk Show, just saw the man in the white suit, sales would jump 10%. Got him on Johnny Carson when he pushed forward all $2 million that he'd been paid in a plastic case. Now, you know, at his age, he'd get by with that. And he was a colorful fellow. And he, you know, he's from the mountains. He just tell it like it is. So he was a great showman.
So was the marketing basically him? Was that the key to it?
Yes. I mean, he would go on parades. He would give interviews. And he was he really knew his product. I listened to him more than did all 10,000 employees because he really felt the culture of what he developed. He understood the customer. And new people come in, they want to change it and get credit for some change. It didn't need any changing other than to take it out of a restaurant and put it in a take-home. And then we provided the marketing and the first co-op, and then we engineered automatic kind of process where you cook 6 times more chicken. And we were ahead of the curve in developing it, mostly because we just thought that was a decision we could make, because it was all untried until we tried it. But looking back, it's the same concept today as when I sold it. Same menu. We had crispy, and it probably should have changed because half of all chicken is off the bone now. It's a new generation. But hopefully they will, because I'm proud of the success they've had. And China, they're like king of China. They're 3 times bigger than McDonald's. But it is a great product, and he's just a unique marketing opportunity. And I was very fortunate. I did a good job But I give most of the credit to the right idea at the right time. I think Victor Hugo said, nothing so powerful as an idea whose time has come. And that's exactly what happened. Nobody else is doing it. We found a method to get in and capture that market.
After a brief period of rapid growth, John Y. Brown sold his interest in Kentucky Fried Chicken just 7 years later, a company he purchased for $2 million in 1964. He then sold for $284 million in 1971. That's right, $284 million.
That's a pretty good investment.
The Colonel Sanders story is a powerful story about an entrepreneur and about a startup. Governor Brown reflects on the Colonel's story and legacy.
I think it's the greatest entrepreneurial story of the last century. You can imagine one that changed a whole industry. And people eat differently now, and they are around the world. Had the Colonel and his recipe, and that's about all we needed.
Colonel Sanders had been a farmer. He worked on the railroad, he was an insurance salesman, he ran a gas station, a motel, and a restaurant. He was in his 60s when he sold his original restaurant in Corbin and started franchising what would eventually become Kentucky Fried Chicken.
So at age 66, that's when I resolved to start franchise. So I think the moral to my life is, don't quit at age 65. Maybe your boat hasn't come in yet, see? Mine hadn't come. Till I was 66, I got on that boat, and I've been riding it ever since. It's been a good one.
After his death, Colonel Sanders was portrayed by the company's marketing engine in the form of a cartoon, but has recently been brought back to human form in 2015, being portrayed in viral videos by comedians and actors Daryl Hammond and Norm Macdonald. The white suit, the black satin western tie, the glasses, the white hair, the goatee, the accent. It's all become iconic. In fact, it has all become quite intentionally iconic. You'd be hard-pressed to find any high-profile founder of a global company playing such an integral role in marketing 50 years after selling the company. I think we'll end this episode with 2 questions. The interview was conducted by a young woman in the late 1970s. She mentions at the beginning of the reel-to-reel tape that it's being conducted for her History of Kentucky class. She conducts a great interview with the Colonel, but she only labels the tape with the Colonel's name, not hers. We ask, who was this young interviewer? We would love to find out and interview her about this experience. And question 2,
Will we order extra crispy or original recipe for the Nunn Center today? I'm getting hungry, mighty hungry.
Thanks for listening to The Wisdom Project. The Wisdom Project podcast is brought to you by the Louie B. Nunn Center for Oral History in the University of Kentucky Libraries. It's hosted and produced by Doug Boyd and Kopana Terry.
Our assistant producer today for this episode was Danielle Gabbard, and the music is written by Doug Boyd.
You can find more episodes at thewisdomproject.life.
We also encourage you to listen to the full interviews with Colonel Sanders and John Y. Brown Jr. online at KentuckyOralHistory.org.
They're searchable using our super cool search system called OHMS that makes the audio and video online discoverable. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcasting platform. Like the Nunn Center on Facebook or check out our blog at nuncenter.org. And follow Kopana and I on Twitter at Douglas A. Boyd and at The Real Kopana.
Except no substitutes.
Stay tuned for the next episode of The Wisdom Project.